Hello, this is Sarah Brash. Welcome back to my channel. So I want to do, this video is going to be about Mike Solana. I think that's how he pronounces his name. I don't know him. I never heard of him before. And how he was delusional on Bari Weiss's Substack recently about both Twitter and also about journalism. And specifically what he calls citizen journalism. So Mike Solana is apparently some big tech guy in Silicon Valley, a venture capitalist. I guess he is somebody, a big wig at the Founders Fund. Does that sound right? I honestly don't know who he is. I'd never heard of him before he wrote something for Bari Weiss's Substack. So he wrote something recently for Bari Weiss's Substack immediately after. So of course Jack Dorsey was out as CEO of Twitter. And then Twitter almost immediately implemented a policy saying that it is against their terms of service to post private image and video of private citizen nobodies without their consent. And this is it's perfectly obvious to anyone with half a brain that this is meant to make sure that what was done to me on Twitter never happens to anyone else ever again, especially not to a private citizen nobody. So as everyone is fully aware, basically I was subjected to woke KKK cancel culture and trial by Twitter without due process, and I almost died many times over. I almost killed myself many times over. I'd go into hiding for more than 3 years for my personal safety. I was deluged by death and rape threats and threats of violence. I've been incessantly mobbed. It's not done. It's still happening. I've been incessantly mobbed for more than 3.5 years, and not just by anonymous Twitter trolls. Oh no, there is hardly a Twitter blue checkmark public figure of epic proportions who did not, participate in the witch hunt at Yale that almost got me killed and destroyed my lifelong human and civil rights career. So this new policy of Twitter is pretty obviously meant to make sure that what happened to me, a private citizen nobody, completely innocent, never sought the spotlight, dedicated my life to fighting oppression, and my life was destroyed within moments, and I'm still subjected to death threats sending mobs pretty much every day. I'm still defamed, grossly defamed in the fake news press pretty much every day. Richard Painter and USA Today both tried to lynch me on Thanksgiving, and I have other videos where I talk about what I mean by that, and why I use that language, which is because the woke KKK uses that language against me, and I'm reflecting their evil back onto them. So, but what I want specifically to talk about in this video is Mike Solana's piece that he wrote for Bari Weiss's Substack specifically about the fact that Jack Dorsey completely left Twitter. So I guess now he's just the CEO of Square. He's done with Twitter. And now there's a new CEO of Twitter. And apparently what I've heard is that he's the wokest of the woke. I don't know. I'll have to look him up. But there was some sort of mini uproar over a decade-old tweets of his, which I don't care about decade-old tweets of his. Anyway, so Mike Solana was specifically addressing Jack Dorsey leaving Twitter. What is post-Jack Dorsey Twitter going to be like? And also, he was specifically addressing this new policy not allowing private images and photos of private citizen nobodies without their consent on Twitter, which is very obviously meant to try to end or at least curb woke KK cancel culture, trial by Twitter without due process, and end the careers of Twitter race hustlers like Sean Kane, whose bread and butter is trying to drive private citizen nobodies to suicide on Twitter by posting, snippets of out of context video of private citizen nobodies on Twitter and accuse them of racism and accuse them of horrible things. And then they get subjected to woke KK cancel culture and trial by Twitter without due process. And everyone joins the mob and the witch hunt. And then they get fired or they get expelled or they get disbarred and their life is decimated. And sometimes they commit suicide and nobody cares because everybody's just making Black trauma moral outrage industry money hand over fist, including the fake news press. So Mike Solana basically is upset about in the piece he wrote for Bari Weiss's Substack, he's upset about this new policy of Twitter's, and he basically casts Jack Dorsey in the light of trying to save, free speech on Twitter, and he was stymied by the corporation around him, and now he's been basically ousted, and so now that he's gone and he's been ousted, this is going to be the end of free speech and free discourse on Twitter, and specifically Mike Solana says that it's going to be the end of citizen journalism. So I basically just asked Mike Solana if he was drunk when he wrote this, because I think he must have been, or I think he's just delusional, because apparently he's a big tech guy, but I don't think he has any concept of what's been happening on Twitter over the past 3 or 4 years, and I don't think he has any concept of what's been happening in journalism over the past 3 or 4 years. Okay, I don't know what he thinks citizen journalism is, but it doesn't exist, basically. What exists is woke KKK cancel culture and trial by Twitter without due process and on Twitter. And what exists is the Black trauma moral outrage industry, where everyone's trying to be the next Sean Kane. Everyone's a Sean Kane style Twitter race hustler now. And everyone's trying to capture snippets of out of context iPhone video of their little old white lady busybody neighbor who doesn't like their Tigger flag and make a TikTok video about it and get 10 million views. And that's what suffices for citizen journalism nowadays. And then Newsweek pretends like this is a legitimate news story so that they can make Black trauma moral outrage industry money too, off of getting a little old white lady private citizen nobody killed or destroying her life. So that's what citizen journalism is on Twitter and TikTok and Facebook and all of the social media outlets. So but here's the thing too, is that I don't know what rock Mike Solana's been living under for the past 3 or 4 years, but if he thinks journalism, mainstream journalism is any better, he's delusional. He's drunk if he thinks that, or delusional. I don't know where his state of mind is at, why he thinks these ridiculous, asinine, ludicrous things, but something's up with him, with Mike Solana, based on what he said on Bari Weiss's Substack. So journalism doesn't exist anymore either. Journalism is dead. They are all Sean Kane style Twitter race hustlers too. Like I said, Newsweek pretended that this woman's TikTok video of her little old white lady busybody neighbor was a legitimate news story. I'm going to do a video after this about what the New York Times and Jamel Bowie did to me. Okay? Jamel Bowie of the New York Times is a Sean Kane style Twitter race hustler now. He is not a journalist. Okay? Journalism is dead. The New York Times is the fake news press. They are leading the fake news press and the Black trauma moral outrage industry. Everyone's a Black trauma moral outrage industry charlatan and fraud now. I don't know what rock Mike Solana's been living under, but this is what has happened in the past 3 or 4 years, okay? Joy Reid of MSNBC, Sean King style Twitter race hustler. Michael Harriot of The Root, Sean King style Twitter race hustler. Don Lemon of CNN, Sean King style Twitter race hustler. Everybody's trying to push Living While Black race and hate crime hoaxes for Black trauma moral outrage industry, money and gain. And they don't care if they destroy the Living While Black movement by doing this. And they don't care if they destroy innocent lives. They don't care if they drive people to suicide. And this is why we have to revisit New York Times v. Sullivan. Because right now, the fake news press can wantonly destroy the lives of private citizen nobodies with near impunity. And all they'd have to do is pretend that it's a legitimate news story when someone takes a TikTok video of their little old white lady busybody neighbor. Okay? That's why we have to revisit New York Times v. Sullivan. Journalism is dead. Okay, journalism is dead. And citizen journalism, whatever Mike Solana thought that was, never existed. Okay? Everyone is a Sean King style Twitter race hustler. They don't care about racism. They don't care about black people. They don't care about police brutality. Because actually fighting racism and police brutality is hard work. Actually doing social justice work, the real social justice work, is hard work. Do you want to know what's not hard work? Being a Sean King style Twitter race hustler and driving private citizen nobodies to suicide via woke KKK cancel culture and trial by Twitter without due process. Okay, I'm going to stop here because I don't want this video to get too long, but I love you all so much and have a great night, and I will have all of my fundraising links below. Please support me. We will end cancel culture and trial by Twitter and stop the fake news press and black trauma moral outrage industry from destroying any more lives. Okay, I'll talk to you soon. Bye.